you're ready.
Okay, is Donna? Is Donna?
No,
Jane?
no. You're just gonna.
Is on? Okay, so can you hear us and everything, Jane? Jamie, do you want me to unmute my computer? I'm just wondering if we might get echoes and all that kind of stuff if I unmute.
Let's try it with it muted first. Everyone needs to have the microphone on and talk into the microphone.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to leave mine muted for the time being. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks very much for coming. Before we actually start the meeting tonight, there's two aspects on public hearings. The first one is as we stated in the last hearing, the High Point public hearing is closed. It was open for the receipt of written comments, and we did receive at least one written comment today, and I forward that to the board and to Jen for entry in the official record. The next item on the agenda, actually, next public hearing, before we get to the agenda meeting, is Hearn Road. So let me open that meeting at 6:03, a public hearing on Hearn. So who would like to address the board on Hearn? If anyone.
Mr. Supervisor, it's Rob Rossborough on behalf of the property owner.
Yeah, just turn it up. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, Rob.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and members of the town board for holding this public hearing on the rezoning of my client's property. Like we said in our last public hearing on this, my client is looking for a solution for the issues that he's been seen with the LC zone split with the C7 zone and the location of that line in particular. We have reviewed the proposed revisions to the location of that zone split. And although it's not what we had proposed originally, my client has no objections to the revision that would bring the zoning line location just north of the DEC wetland buffer area. So we wanted to make that clear to the board. We also wanted to make clear to the public that there is no project that is currently being proposed in connection with this rezoning. It is just a rezoning of the land. And that's all that we're looking for here. So we just wanted to thank the board and just give the update that we have reviewed the zoning change, and we have no objection to what is currently being proposed, but would maintain our prior objection to the split that was previously adopted.
Thank you, Rob. Would anyone else like to address the board in this public hearing on the Hearn Road matter? Hearing no one in the room, I just want to give it one more moment for anyone participating through Zoom to make sure we're not excluding anyone. Okay, hearing no further comments, I will close the Hearn public hearing at 6:06 p.m. And now we will begin our agenda meeting. So I would like everyone to join me in a salute to the flag and a silent prayer. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, thank you very much. The first item on the agenda tonight is to accept the town clerk minutes of March 1st and March 15th.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next item on the agenda, the only action item we have for tonight is to award the emergency support highway contract. And that is to, let's see, Evolution Construction Services as primary and Kubricki Construction as secondary to take care of emergency work that comes up from time to time on the highways. Do we have a
Move the
motion?
resolution. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, next item on the agenda. Do we have any comments or announcements from town board members?
I have a couple brief items. This week, we'll bring to a conclusion the formal component of a program that has really been fantastic. The Malta Give to Dine program. We've raised since the end of 2020, raised now over $10,000 to feed the hungry here in Malta. And I just want to, once again, thank Nanola for all their work on this, the Saratoga Chamber, so many private donors that have put their money in. This program would allow folks that were in need to pick up a free meal for a family of 4 every Wednesday afternoon at 4:00. I forget the even total number. We're well over 1,000 people fed with this program, all completely with private money, with donations. So thank you so much for everyone that helped out with that. A different but related fun restaurant project, just to give an update, the 2021 Malta Works promotion, operating solely due to the generosity of the Global Foundries Town of Malta Foundation. The Saratoga County Prosperity Partnership received a grant of $5,000 for this promotion to basically promote Malta businesses and restaurants through this tough time. Anyone that spends $20.21 in a Malta restaurant can take a picture of their receipt, send it into info@saratoga.org, and gets entered into a raffle to win a $100 or a $50 gift card to a Malta restaurant or business, and that rotates every week. We're now at the end of week 4 of a 9-week program. At the end of 9 weeks, there's going to be one grand prize winner that's drawn at random for a $500 gift card to the Malta business of their choice. So these funds from Global Foundries have been going towards buying these gift cards that are helping our Malta businesses, but also providing advertising to get people into our Malta businesses and spending money. And spend money they have. To date, there's been nearly $18,500 worth of sales to Malta businesses associated with this program. So thank you very much to Global Foundries, again, to the Saratoga County Chamber for helping administer this, to the Prosperity Partnership for doing all the heavy lifting and work on this, and of course to all our many Malta small businesses. You can find lists of participating businesses at maltaworks.org, and go get dinner, go do some shopping, go to farm and garden. It's garden season. Get out and spend if you have the money to do so right now. And thank you for indulging me here for a moment.
Thanks, Tim. That is a great program. Thank you very much. Any other town board members have any announcements or comments? Okay, how about department heads? We have some reports and everything, but if there's anything for any department head to add.
Jamie, is Ray Lynn happen to be on? She wasn't sure if she was going to be able to be on or not. But I just kind of wanted to ask her how's it going with the reveal? They're probably ramping up. I saw a lot of boxes of notices of change in her office today.
Yeah, I know that.
Yep.
Is Ray Lynn on? Okay, Ray Lynn.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yes, Cynthia, you're correct. We got our notices from the printer today. There's approximately 6,400 of them to be stuffed and mailed. We're hoping to have that all done and ready to be mailed out on Wednesday so that everybody will have them on the 1st. If not, they will be mailed out on the 1st for receipt around the 2nd. And there will be a cover letter in there that will explain the entire process for informal reviews. We're going to try to handle as many of them electronically as we can. And so far, everything has been working fine with that mode. And, if anybody needs any assistance, just give us a call and we'll do our best to help you out.
Thanks, Raylan.
Thanks, Raylene. Any other board members? All righty. Questions or comments from town residents? First of all, let me direct my attention to the people in the room. Is there any town residents in the room who would like to address the board? Yes, Greg. You want to go to the mic, Greg, so that everybody on Zoom can hear you?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and good evening, town board members and ladies and gentlemen. Just very quickly, Darren, on Thursday, March 25th, Global Foundries in writing submitted to the town board and to all the parties concerned a letter concerning the proposed application by Skinnel that is under consideration by the town board. And we would just simply like you to affirm for us that the letter has been received by all and is part of the public record in this proceeding.
It's definitely been received by all, I think. Can all the board members confirm that?
Yes.
Yep.
I have
And yes, has that entered into the record of the proceedings?
I can enter it into this evening's public.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a formal public hearing, but.
No, I understand that, but we would just want acknowledgement that it is part of the public record for the proceeding that's currently.
Okay, can we just make that part of the public record, John?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank
Can
you.
we,
Jack.
can we put
Also-
it in can we put it in the minutes for tonight's meeting, perhaps?
Correct, that's what I'll do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Also, we'd like to acknowledge, Mr. Supervisor, your letter in response to that, and we appreciate the promptness in your reply and your continued support as this application moves forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Greg. Anyone else in the room before I turn to the Zoom participants? Okay, anyone participating by Zoom, would you like to address the board on any matter whatsoever? Jamie, I'll wait for you to tell me who's got a hands up. Kathy, how are you doing?
Good, good. I got my hand up.
All right.
Yes, thank you so much to the supervisor and to the board for supporting all the seniors. I would say probably 97% of our members have been vaccinated, and we've helped out several other people that are not members, but also seniors in Malta and the surrounding areas. So that is going very well. I think it's made our seniors feel more comfortable and feeling that we're headed forward. Also, April the 5th, the day after Easter, is our meeting, and we're having Dr. Goodmont, and he is excellent. He's talking about senior strength. It is a registration that you have to give me for that meeting. We are at about 45 people, so we're almost at our capacity, and we'll have it 2 sittings. So if anybody's interested in doing that, you do not need to be a member to come, but you do need to register. Trying to reach out to as many people as we can. So that's pretty much it. Again, thank you again for all you guys are doing, and keep up the good work.
Thanks very much, Kathy. Who's next, Jamie? Okay, I'm just going to give it a moment just in case. We'll have another comment section at the end of the meeting if anyone, would like to comment on anything that we were going to say during the meeting or anything else. So. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda then. And this is to discuss the possible or the probable matters that are going to be on the agenda for our regular meeting on April 5th, a week from tonight. The first item on that agenda will be a presentation for the 203 Ruley Road South, and that's the Rod and Gun Club, the former Rod and Gun Club. I think that's LC now, and I think there's going to be an application or a presentation on some ideas as to what might be done with that property.
Are we going to have any more information than that? I mean, that seems pretty vague to put it on the agenda. Is there something specific that we can have before the meeting?
I think that's coming in, right, Jamie?
Roseanne asked the consultant to provide information to the town board prior to April 5th, so it should be forthcoming.
Well, that was LC before the current owner actually purchased it, right? Correct?
And I have an email to Ray Lynn, and we're gonna talk about numbers and everything tomorrow, and in terms of dates and when things were zoned LC, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm still not clear what it is we're going to be doing with this at our meeting.
Well, basically, as I understand it, it's just a presentation by Scott Lansing as to a proposal for it, just for, presenting it to the board to see what their initial reaction is, if any.
Like a PDD concept, is that what we're talking about, or rezoning concept?
I believe one or the other, probably a PDD concept. We've had very general conversations with them about things that are or are not going on at the property. And so I think that's going to form a part of Scott's presentation.
Is it residential, commercial? I mean, again, it's still,
It's LC.
No, I'm talking about the proposal. Are
Oh.
we going to any information ahead of time as to what it is?
I think the idea is residential, but I don't even know that, John.
Why don't they submit this stuff first, then we can look at it and then we put them on the agenda?
Well, I think it's coming in, on the assumption that it's going to come in. If nothing comes in, we can always take it off the agenda, but I expect something to be coming.
Well, to do our jobs, I'd like to have time to read stuff, maybe ask some questions, maybe talk to Jamie. What's the rush? Why can't we receive the information, look at it, then put it on the agenda?
It's just, there's no action called for, John. So in terms of rushing, we're not rushing any action. There's no action that's going to be on the agenda for next week on this matter. We're simply going to hear Scott make a presentation about what they have in mind.
Well, before we put him on the agenda, I'd like to see what it is he's going to talk about.
Okay, well, thanks, John. I appreciate that. I'm going to leave it on the agenda unless everybody on the board doesn't want to leave it on the agenda.
I think in the past, there have been other proposals that we've gotten. I mean, we always get it before the meeting, so I too would like to at least see something before the meeting, but we've gotten stuff about presentations at the 11th hour before and still allowed the applicant to make the presentation. So I'm okay with leaving it on the agenda as long as,
And I got the same request also,
Yeah.
please, Scott. Oh, it isn't dropped off at 4:00 Monday afternoon. Some kind of an overview anyways on it.
Okay. Ambulance district update. The map planner report is undergoing some finishing touches. We are getting ready to, send that out to the board and also provide a copy to mayor so that the village around Lake can decide whether to participate or not in it, if that's what indeed the board decides to do. So we will have that soon. And we met with Scott today to discuss numbers and what the proposed ambulance district might look like. And so we'll have more information coming out on that. And hopefully we'll get that map plan and report out, fairly soon, within the next few days, I think, to the board.
So for our next meeting, it'll be on the agenda for a presentation on it.
I just wanted to discuss it tonight. Obviously this is a very important subject for the board in general. So I'm not planning on putting it on as an action item next week because I don't think there'll be enough time, to go into the details. We obviously have to consider the timing for a referendum if that's what the board wants to do. So it may be that to make the timing work within the window that's set out by, the town law, we might have to have a special meeting on it, but I'm not planning at least on any action item on a week from tonight.
You're anticipating we'll get an update next week on it, right?
This week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So for next week, we'll be briefed on the draft report then? Is that what it's on the agenda for our next meeting for?
Well, I mean, we can put it on the agenda, but I hope to circulate the map plan and report to the board so it
Okay.
can review it itself. And then, if there's any need to put it on the agenda for further discussion, we can. It's an amendment from the last map plan report that's been around for a long, long time. So, much of it is the same.
Okay.
Okay, the next item on the agenda for next week will be the Hearn Road rezoning to consider proposal to rezone Hearn Road. And we'll be going through the pros and cons of that. As we just heard the discussions tonight on Hearn Road. So we have, a proposal for a different line than the one that was passed before, a horizontal one that seems to follow the contours of the property a little bit more. The diagonal line, the one that's current from the old proposal, has the advantage of hitting a corner and excluding one of the neighbors there from it. But so I think they both have something, something going for them. I tend to favor the horizontal line because I think it follows the contours of the property better. And so that's on the agenda for next week.
If I can, Darren, I did take the opportunity last week to take a nice little walk in the woods with Mr. Hammond. And, as I've said before, in a perfect world, we wouldn't do anything. And it was really, it didn't make our job any easier because it really is a nice, pleasant wooded area. But as we don't live in a perfect world, I think we have to make some sort of change. So, I tend to agree with you that the horizontal line seems to make a little more sense, but we'll listen to more discussion of our colleagues next week.
We have an agreement that the litigation will be discontinued if this is adopted.
I believe so. Leah, you want to comment on that?
You can go to the front table as well.
Sorry, it's a little awkward trying to get to a microphone. We have an agreement in writing. We don't have a formal settlement document, John. We have an agreement in writing, and I think is Mr. Rossborough still on Zoom?
Yes, I'm here, Leah.
Yeah, and I think he can speak to this better as far as his client's position on resolution of the litigation, depending upon the outcome of which local law is ultimately adopted.
And that's correct. We have, like I said, maintained our objection to the previous law that was passed, but would agree to resolve the litigation should the town board make the change to the horizontal line that has been described by the supervisor.
When you say agree to resolve, you would agree to discontinue on the merits with prejudice, no costs. You're done, right?
That would all be part of a settlement agreement that we would work out with the town, yes.
So that's not worked out yet then?
As Ms. Everhart said, we do not have a formal executed settlement agreement, no.
Do we have a conceptual agreement?
Right, we have written statements from the petitioner's counsel that in the event the town board adopts the most recently proposed local law, that it will discontinue the litigation.
Thanks very much. Just a couple of thoughts here. I tried to, there's two concerns that I have, and I won't beat a dead horse here, traffic and the amount of transformation that will happen to that property. As you saw, town board, the property is being advertised as having, I think it was 110,000 cubic yards of material to be removed that would help the economics of development of the property. And I provided, thanks to my brother, the engineer, a calculation that showed 110,000 cubic yards of materials is over 100 feet tall. So picture a pile of dirt over 100 feet tall coming out of the side of that hill. That's the 110,000, or I think maybe it was 140, that the realtor that listed the property said could be removed from there. That will be a dramatic change in the aesthetics of that part of our town. The other concern that I have is that the petitioner here or landowner has wisely engaged very competent legal counsel who has, I think, considerable experience and expertise in this area. And what I believe they will do, if need be, is they will go to the planning board with a development proposal and say, you've approved a larger project in the past, with the same concerns over traffic. This is a smaller project. Your failure to approve it on the basis of any objections on traffic is arbitrary and capricious because you've approved it previously where there was more traffic. That's my concern, is that we're setting our planning board up into that kind of a difficult situation if we allow this to go forward. I think some on the town board may believe that they can rely on the ability of the planning board to stop something that is not a good fit. But because the project was approved previously by the planning board at a larger scale, it creates a circumstance where they will potentially be on the defensive. So those are my concerns. The greatest of these is the traffic. That part of our town is served by 2 exits. There's no other way out. One is across the Nelson Avenue Bridge or through Katie Ross. Nelson Avenue Bridge, as we know, has been put on basically life support and will not be replaced when it deteriorates. That leaves this exit out of that Malta Ridge part of town to accommodate all the property in that quadrant of our town. And if we mess up this intersection, you will basically mess up the ability of folks to get in and out of that part of town. Thanks for hearing me out.
Thanks, John. Anyone else?
I just want to ask a question. I know that they received the zoning variances to take care of the slopes, but was there actually an approved project there also? There was, huh?
2009 it was approved. It was extended, I think, maybe 3 times.
At least.
Yeah.
And now it's expired.
Yeah.
Yeah, long since expired.
The rule is that once a project has been approved, and the same type of project comes along again and it's turned down, it's arbitrary and capricious. And it puts the jurisdiction on the defense to prove that somehow there's been a substantial change in circumstance that warrant the rejection of something that was previously approved. And again, Stephanie and counsel from Whiteman Osterman, very, very capable counsel, and they know this rule, and they'll use it if they have to. Thanks.
Thanks, John and Cynthia. Anybody else have any comments on this at this point? Okay, the next item on the agenda for next week will be the High Point situation, and that's the Chapter 139. The board has been dealing with this for a long, long time, years, in fact. And there's not an easy way out. It's a very difficult kind of choice. We've taken lots of feedback from the residents in the neighborhood. A couple of choices were to remove the sidewalks entirely, and so that there wouldn't be any upkeep obligation. If I were a resident and I was strictly looking at it from that point of view, I think that's probably the option that I would personally go for. But hearing the comments come in and reading some of the written comments persuaded me that the residents buying in there with sidewalks, especially those with families, did so in reliance on there being sidewalks, et cetera, and that those kind of legitimate expectations are too difficult, are too hard to ignore. And therefore, what I'm going to propose to the board would be to remove the exemption, but keep the sidewalks and put in an amount of money, which we currently have at 100,000 to repair the sidewalks. If that in the future doesn't appear adequate, then I think, the town can consider some form of a sidewalk district to address that as well as other neighborhoods. So that's going to be the proposal next week.
Do we
I-
anticipate that the $100,000, I mean, how much of the repair project do we think that will cover? Because as I last understood it, it's still not enough money.
Well, I think the current proposal is much less than that, right, Kevin? I think it was 70s or something.
Estimate by Evolution provided for specific repairs to the Bristol area, and we're putting in the metal 88 plates at intersections in the neighborhood of $75,000.
In listening to we increased that number because in listening to some of the comments, it appeared that, we might have other expenses in there. So, we decided that for present purposes, a proposal for the board would be 100,000 over 3 years.
I really, see the, kind of the compromise and the an attempt at a practical compromise here, Darren, of the proposal that you've outlined. But, when you look at it, this is a bad situation of the town's making. We're the ones that agreed to the current the current legal arrangement. We're the ones that agreed to allow the asphalt substandard walks to be put in. We're the ones that haven't maintained them over the decades. It's really the town's responsibility for the circumstances as they now are. And I've heard the argument, and it's a legitimate argument, that for the town taxpayers to now fix this, others in town shouldn't bear the expense. Well, I think the counter argument that isn't my argument, it's an argument the neighbors have made, is that when this arrangement was put in place, when the PDD was approved, there was an overall package that involved the developer giving the town all of the land for the community center. So all those residents, throughout town, all of us have enjoyed the benefit of having that essentially free land to build the community center on. So to me, when you boil it down, I respect what you're trying to accomplish here as a practical compromise, but to me, and it's the town taking the easy way out and basically not standing up and taking responsibility for the circumstances that we created. I think the way to take responsibility is to get the walks constructed in a proper condition, meaning concrete walks like we're required throughout the rest of town. And once we've done that, then we can treat them like everybody else in town is treated. But to slough off kind of a mess onto the taxpayers, or excuse me, those neighbors, because it's such a mess that we don't want to fix it. To me, I don't think that's a good example for us in town government. So I think the answer is to finance, if necessary, the replacement of the walks with proper walks to our normal concrete walk standard, and then we can turn them over. If that takes a while, it's going to take a while, but I just think this is, really not fulfilling our responsibility for creating, at the town's level, kind of a mess.
Anyone else on the board with any comments on this issue?
Yeah, I think obviously there's no easy answer to this problem, but I think that the compromise that you've come up with here, Darren, is a pretty good one. You know, my one of my greatest fears sitting up here is that, you know, we compound bad public policy with more bad public policy. And regardless of any decisions that were made and special agreements that were cut in the past, you know, we are responsible for, you know, today and tomorrow in this town. And I don't think it's responsible to, you know, be pursuing and having the entire town on the hook for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't even know at this point to build out sidewalks in one single neighborhood. You know, I think that the compromise that you've come up with is a good one. I think it preserves the safety and sanctity of those sidewalks. It improves them. It puts them into a much better place, and also provides equity for the rest of the town. And I say that as someone, I have a lot of friends that live in that neighborhood. I've walked those sidewalks quite a bit, and you know, it's one of the few neighborhoods in town that has sidewalks of that age. And you know, I don't think there's a perfect solution here, but I do think that what you have proposed is the most practical and responsible decision for us to undertake.
Thanks, Tim. Anybody else on this
Yeah,
issue?
I got a problem on our trees there that actually caused the problem. Are we going to keep the trees, cut the trees so they don't keep on growing in and heaving that asphalt?
Yeah, I think we're going to
What's
cut.
that plan?
The plan is to cut the trees, you know, those along Thistle that, you know, you can see are causing some of the bulging in the asphalt. So, you know, the plan is to remove those trees that, you know, are responsible for causing at least a decent part of this problem.
As well as roots, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And all our heating also is going to get fixed also.
Yeah.
In
What,
the
I mean, those, you know, those bubbles, the things that can interfere with walking, you know, they pose a danger.
Tripping.
You know, fix them and also
Right.
fix the cause of them, which is the
Right.
trees.
Okay.
I think you outlined that well here in the resolution, Darren.
Again, an arrangement was put in place. We want to continue to enjoy the benefits of that arrangement. That being, we get to continue to own the community center, but we don't want to live with the obligations of that agreement that was made. We're just going to slough it off. And I just don't think that's the right way to approach it. I realize it's costly for us, the town board. I wish they hadn't cut the deal. I wouldn't have done it back then if I was on the town board. But we can't just turn our back on arrangements, agreements that prior town boards have made because we don't like it, and continue to retain the beneficial parts of those agreements. I don't think that's fair.
Okay, understood. I don't think there's any kind of formal agreement there, John. I mean, we've looked at the
The
historical.
agreement is in the PDD. The agreement is that we took the land.
No, I'm talking about the other side of the agreement, what you're talking about, the sidewalks. I don't think that was in any, it's not in the PDD, I'm not aware of
The
any other.
exemption, yeah, the exemptions in the PDD. We allowed them to, the PDD provides for the substandard walks to be constructed, and it exempts the walks from the maintenance requirement.
I don't know if that's in, I mean, it's in
It
the
is.
town code, but I don't think there is an agreement addressing that.
Well,
I mean, obviously,
I-
let me finish, John. Obviously, if there was some agreement, some legally enforceable agreement, you know, we would abide by it, but certainly council hasn't suggested that there is one.
Oh, my use of the word agreement is not meant as a legal term of art, Darren. It's that the PDD and what was agreed to essentially with the developer by enacting the PDD is what happened. That's what I mean by agreement. I don't mean binding legal contract.
Okay, understood. Anyone else with any comments on this? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Skinnel project at the campus. You know, we've heard discussions of this. The board has had lots of discussions. We've had applications for amendments to the PDD and some modifications to those applications. The most current one was in today, and we have a summary of the changes that were made that was provided to the board today. We've been in discussions with our engineers. And one of those discussions, obviously, we're talking about the real problem of traffic that would be, that would be raised by a project of this sort. So, what the thought is, based on our engineers' advice, is to change the scoping document a little bit and provide that the scope would include a full traffic study that took into account the development to date and the potential for another chip fab plant, as discussed in the environmental impact statement findings in 2013 and 2015. And then the proposal would be with that, change to just kind of, get some more information as to the traffic implications, and then move forward with the, resolution adopting the scoping document and move forward with the GEIS. Any further discussion on that? I mean, obviously, it'll be before the board next week, and, the board will have this week to look at, some of the most recent changes to the PDD application.
Does the applicant have any thoughts or feedback on that?
Sorry about that. Not moving very fast. I guess the only questions we have about that is the one of the approvals contemplated that if Global Foundries didn't get a building permit by 2018, that they would be doing an additional traffic study. And we were trying to pin down whether that additional traffic study was ever done or not.
The answer to that is no, it wasn't done. We were in discussions with it. And one of the things I might propose is that, Skinnel and Global Foundries, jointly fund a traffic study, which would, deal with the obligation on Global Foundries to do the traffic study, and kind of kill two birds with one stone and reduce the cost for each party. So, obviously that's up to the parties.
Sure.
But it's just a possible suggestion. One of the ideas about not, having the traffic study in 2018 was that there wasn't enough changes made or things on the, in the offing, to really call for a study at that time. We thought it would probably be better later on. So the town didn't enforce, the obligation to have a traffic study done in 2018.
And the site plan, was the site plan approved, or is the site plan still yet to be approved for Fab 2.8?
8.2.
8.2.
There's no site plan approved, I don't think.
Oh, okay. All right. It was
Yeah.
just the PDD amendment. Okay. We were just having trouble piecing together what had happened. That's all.
Okay.
And we do have the memo from Chazen, which we're taking a look at. And there were extensive discussions between Chazen and the applicant in terms of the scope. And I guess the only thing that we would request is, based on the scope that's being put together, we would hope that at the next meeting, you would be in a position to require the preparation of the supplemental environmental impact statement with the scope. And I assume that's what you're headed towards.
That's going to be my proposal, Teresa.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. Thank you. Stuart Messinger, Chazen Companies. We worked with the applicant to develop the scope, and the draft scope that we worked with basically didn't require a traffic study. It said we're just going to compare trips from the Skinnel proposal to the traffic improvement trip thresholds in the original 2004 DEIS. And we then did a deeper dive into the record, and Teresa has brought up a couple of important points. And based on that, we think there should be a traffic study done for this proposal, because in 2013, when we did the 8.2 DEIS, that's what we required. The key thing here is the phase 4 thresholds, which are in our memo, require exit 11A, which is a fabulously expensive thing that no one wants to build or has the money to build. So what happened in that EIS is they did a traffic study, and there was an agreement that with some alternative improvements, we wouldn't need exit 11A. And those improvements were required to be in place before a CO for 8.2. Well, the application, as Teresa is asking, and as you point out, was never made for 8.2. So those improvements haven't been made. So now we're 17 years later, 17 years, a lot has happened. And I think we have to go back and say, all right, now, given everything that's happened in the meantime, and all the development in the traffic, where are we with this project in terms of those thresholds and what improvements might be needed? Whether or not, to me, it makes sense, whether or not Skinnel and Global Foundries choose to cooperate in a study or not is up to them. I would encourage them to do it. But you have an application in front of you, you have an applicant. And so we need a traffic scope that addresses this issue. It seems to me that it makes sense for a traffic study to look at the project without 8.2, because you have no application for 8.2.
Right.
So look at it on its own. And I think it makes sense as an alternative to say, what if there is an 8.2? And then you guys have kind of a complete set of facts that you can work with and make decisions on. As to be able to adopt the scope next Monday, I'd like to be able to do that, but we've got to define the scope of the traffic study. That's not a lot of time. We are happy to sit down with you folks and your traffic engineer and do that. Alternatively, we can come up with it. I'm not sure we can come up with by Monday, and I'm not sure that you guys can meet with us and talk to us about it before Monday. But that's what I think we need to do.
Got it.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
We can.
So give us a holler and we'll try to set up a meeting with Tom and ourselves just as fast as we can.
All right,
Stu,
So,
would your efforts have been aided if the EAF application actually provided some traffic numbers? Because your memo basically says you're not sure whether the applicant here assumed that they were going to be able to use the capacity that was assumed to be allocated to 8.2 or not. So if the applicant had actually given us data on the EAF, you would have been able to have some insight into that. Is that correct?
The truth of the matter is we needed to look at the record, and we hadn't looked at the record when we worked with the applicant. We hadn't looked at the record in enough detail when we sat down with the applicant to develop a scoping document. The number, so yes, the number of trips would have helped, but I think we were going to get to this conclusion regardless after we looked at the record.
and one thing that was a little bit confusing to the applicant and remains a little bit confusing is the PDD has established thresholds for ancillary development. And those thresholds for ancillary development do not appear in the record so far. And, we're going back a long time to be in any way related to the traffic mitigation. So there's that in and of itself spawned a lot of confusion. You all are not responsible for that confusion. Nobody here is. But I think Stu would agree that the way it's put there, it's a little bit like it would indicate that you have a substantial number of trips when what we're hearing would indicate that maybe not.
I think that's fair, and it goes to why we need a traffic study is we don't know what the numbers are from this. We don't know how they compare with what 8.2 had projected. Again, there's not an application for 8.2, but we did write a whole EIS for it, and we required a number of traffic improvements. And I think you guys are going to have some decisions to make after you see the study, right? So that's I think where we are.
Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So we just received a revised PDD amendment this afternoon, which is 54 pages long. I've not had a chance to see what's changed. I have no idea whether that would bear upon the scope of the EIS. That's not what was sent to our planning boards. Are we going to wait for our planning boards comments to make sure that we address any concerns that they might have in the scope of our EIS?
I'm not so sure there's a reason to wait for having the traffic study done for, further examination. I mean, we've been through a lot of the, amendments that were applied for, as well as the changes that were made. I mean, we discussed those changes during the workshop. So I'm not seeing a strong reason to delay the traffic study.
No, and
Well,
I
I'm
think
talking
from what
about
I'm,
the scope of the EIS. The applicant wants us to fix the scope of the EIS next week. That's what they just said, so that the EIS can go forward. That's my concern, not the scope of the traffic study.
Go ahead.
John, I don't know if this is helpful, but what's being asked of the town board at this point is to establish a scope. If that's done, it wouldn't be shared with involved agencies for comment, because we would be skipping the more formal scoping step. Where we are right now is that the planning board has been referred the application under our zoning code that requires referral of zoning
Right,
applications.
I understand that, right. They're supposed to make recommendations to the town board. My concern is that when we fix the scope of the EIS, we won't have the benefit of their recommendations. That's one concern. The other concern is that I have no idea whether the document that we received this afternoon should affect the scope of the EIS, because this stuff is happening at the last minute. It's being, in my opinion, it's being moved along too aggressively, given the potential consequences of this project to our community.
John, this is Stuart. I haven't reviewed the changes either with respect to whether they would suggest a change in the scope, and so we'll be doing that as well. As Leah says, there isn't a process for getting comments on the scope from any agency unless you have a formal public scope and comment period, which I thought I had understood that the board wasn't going to do in this case. That's up to you.
So our process is internal, right, with our own planning board. We ask them for recommendations on PDD amendments, right? Not for a decision, just for recommendations.
So no, I understand. But talking process wise, we're not at the point where you're at that you would be asking them for recommendations on the PDD amendments themselves.
Yeah, well, if they see
for the EIS.
Yeah, they're not limited to the words of the code, right? If they identify issues that are environmental in nature as part of their review and recommendations to us, potentially we would want to factor those into the scope of the EIS.
Don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that the process in SECRA for doing that is a formal scoping process.
Right.
And that's up to you whether or not to have that. If you
Yeah.
have a formal scoping process, you would open it to the public and all the agencies.
yeah, and my review of this document thus far, I think this is more in response to our workshop a few weeks ago, and there seems to be a lot of clarifying information in here to resolve some of the questions that have been raised previously based on my read of it.
Yeah, Councilman Dunn, you're absolutely correct. All we did was respond to comments from staff, which we had had previously from Ms. Everhart, and then also to the comments that you all made at the workshop meeting. The scope of the project hasn't changed. What we're proposing to do hasn't changed. All we were doing was clarifying and answering certain questions.
Well, for us mere mortals who are slow readers, I wasn't able to get through all 54 pages when I opened it up this afternoon. There's a lot of red line in there. And I feel it's my responsibility to make sure that I've looked at it on behalf of the taxpayers who put me in office.
John probably also doesn't have the summary.
Right.
That we were handed out a summary of the changes tonight, John, that somebody
Right.
should probably be able to send you
I don't have that.
electronically.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Okay. Any other comments on this item on the agenda for next week?
So we still expect to adopt a scoping document next week.
That's going to be the proposal. Yeah, based on, the information we've received from Leah and Shazen.
And that
Right,
will
and-
include a traffic
And
study.
Chazen will be working with the applicant to potentially be able to change the aspect of the scope addressing traffic, changing it from a traffic assessment to a traffic
Traffic
study.
study.
And
So the
that
first part
assumes,
of this.
and that assumes that Skinnel and Chazen, come to an agreement as to what the scoping document would provide for in connection with the traffic study.
Okay.
Does Jamie have any comments on the scope as it's now drafted?
I've already had an opportunity to be able to offer my comments, and so I'm sure after Skinnel and Jason get together, we'll be included in that as well, so. I'll wait.
And will we be including Global Foundries in that conversation also?
There's not a formal process for including global foundries in the review of the scope unless you were to have a public scoping process.
Mhm.
They will be, however, able to comment on the EIS and participate fully in that public process.
Okay.
And informally, we've been providing global foundries with, the documents, information as we get them in.
Okay.
Because, obviously we recognize the unique interest that the company has. So,
I'm not going to get up again until you tell me we're done.
okay, any more comments on this issue before we move to the next item on the agenda?
Thank you, Stu. Thank you.
Okay,
Leah.
thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a code change regarding some regulatory relief during emergencies like the one we've had for the past year for some of our businesses that are under, a lot of stress. So I don't know, Tim, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, this board was great, as well as the supervisor and staff towards the end of last summer, when we started to have a little bit of loosening and some businesses were able to start functioning again, to provide some administrative relief for restaurants and other venues, for outdoor dining, for outdoor music, to allow for some of these businesses to still function without putting public health at risk, subject to the public health restrictions. We obviously, and a lot of that was done through emergency action by the supervisor with the powers that were granted to him, but that's an administrative headache that I believe required multiple resolutions on a regular basis, or multiple notifications on a regular basis. We did have several restaurants reach out, basically asking for a couple key things: is some flexibility on outdoor dining space and approvals on tents, as well as a similar relaxation of the noise restrictions vis-a-vis live outdoor music. I know I had probably 3 different restaurants contact me and other venues, basically saying, hey, if you guys could do the same thing that you did last year. We thought we'd be out of it by now, but here we are in the end of March, and still wearing masks and pretty significant restrictions. So Darren's put together what I think is a pretty good proposal here to essentially, as long as these restrictions remain in place, allow flexibility to some of our restaurants and bars and other venues that would be unable to operate at their 100% capacity during the time of this ongoing pandemic.
We tossed around the idea of just accomplishing this by, resolution, but it's really not possible because we'd be making an effective change in the code without a public hearing. So, for that reason, we've suggested, the change in the language of these sections.
And I will say, one of the good things about this is that, to limit this as long as it pertains to the limitations. So this is not a permanent change, but or something that would just be an open change to the code, but rather something that, could help these businesses out while there are still some restrictions during the emergency.
My only fear is that future supervisors may declare states of emergency on very hot summer days and throw the town wide open.
I think if we, in the future, if Supervisor Hartzell has a graduation party coming up that he wants to, I'm kidding.
Well, you expect more of me than anyone at this point, Tim. I fear that this is the apex of my career in politics, and except for a possible promotion back to citizen, which may in fact happen sooner than I anticipate.
Yeah. Yeah, let's hope, I really hope that these changes, if the board decides to make them, will never be necessary.
Yeah.
But, you know,
And I think, John, to your point, the operative phrase here is provided the venue is prevented from operating at full indoor capacity as a result of an emergency declared by the state, county, or town. So I think that is obvious. It gives us a little bit of a protection there.
all righty. Next item on the agenda is closing the Administrative Capital Project Fund and transferring the small amount remaining. This is as a result of the completion of our highway garage. The two other next items on the agenda for next week will be the service award program. Did I miss something? Oh,
No.
The service award program for Round Lake Hose and Malta Ridge. You know, we do that periodically on a kind of regular basis. And the next item is we were unfortunate to lose a wonderful employee, Matt Glukowski, but we are fortunate to have found a very, very good replacement in Katia Uvigis. So the proposal for the board is to be appointing her to the position of full-time maintenance and custodial worker effective April 5th. The next one will be to appoint a full-time deputy town clerk, if indeed, you know, we've gotten there. And Jen, I think we're pretty much on that path, but we're not absolutely sure yet. Is that it?
We're close, we're not 100%.
Okay, so we wanted to put this on the agenda in the hopes that we're going to be able to make that acknowledgement of Jen's appointment. I don't know whether we're going to have any Multiville Water Assistance Program applications. Do we have any now? None right now. All right, we'll keep it on just in case we get some in the next couple of days. And budget transfers, we may well have some or may not. Oh, no, we'll have some probably, right, Kevin? Okay. All right, other business.
Darren,
Any other business for the board?
If I could, I'd like to request that Tom Ruhan be forced to get on the mic and explain exactly what that RV is behind him in the photograph, and also show that cute little girl to us again, bouncing around. And lastly, tell us exactly where he is with the RV.
All right, Tom. Oh, he's not unmuting himself.
Very safe.
I'm building a new home and we're sequestered in the barn in the RV while the house gets finished. And so you got to see some of my grandchildren running around. And, we were supposed to have dinner earlier, but things ran a little bit late. So that's why you get to look at the backside of my RV.
Well, good luck with that, Tom. I hear that a lot of the building materials are going crazy in price, so I hope you're not having those problems, but.
Yeah, we've been very lucky so far,
Yeah,
Supervisor, very lucky.
sounds good.
I'll take the food and the diapers.
All right, any other business for us? Any other comments from town residents on any matter that you'd like to address to the board? Tony, how are you doing?
Good, thank you for taking the request. So I'm a little, just a matter of process here related to the, I'll just let me turn myself down here. Process related to the High Point sidewalks. Are we going to the board meeting with a suggestion, or there will be continued debate there?
You mean next week?
Yes.
Well, a motion will probably be made and seconded, and then there's always discussion on that motion. So there'll be discussion among the board members next week.
But Tony, you're also always free to comment during the public comment period in the beginning on any topic. So although it won't be a public hearing.
I understand. Thank you for that option. But
Maybe your
I guess
last
I need to
chance.
understand the maneuver. Here's what I guess, here's what I need clarity on. there was mention of potentially funding 100,000 to repair whatever is existing in place. What's not clear to me, are you going to change the code or change the laws where the exception that's in place today, will that be lifted? And then by lifting that, are you forcing us to clear the walks then from that point forward?
Yeah, that's the proposal, to remove the exemption and have the, the High Point HOA or the owners subject to the same rules that apply in all other neighborhoods in the town. Yeah.
So help me understand this scenario then. In the wintertime, if we properly clear, but someone gets hurt because the sidewalk is in bad repair, who's going to be liable in that scenario?
Generally homeowners are under the law, but that's a legal question that, I don't want to answer directly or definitively right now, Tony.
But the proposal is here to fix the deficiencies in the sidewalks with the funds being allocated.
I hear the proposal. However, attorneys will always go back to a standard. We have never been built to an appropriate standard that will protect us in the event of litigation because someone was harmed on these walks. Again, we keep going back and around on ownership, liability, and then the future and the way forward. We've never will have an appropriate set of walks in this neighborhood until we get reset. And until we have that proper reset, we're always going to be at risk here. I don't care who owns it. You're still going to have a liability problem here.
I think the state is pretty clear on who has that liability.
And so then I am
sidewalks.
So now you're going to put this development, 150 homeowners within the development of the HOA, and then specifically the homeowners who happen to select a home that has a walkway in front of it at added risk. Now you're going to force me to ensure that I repair this walk because I have to make sure I protect myself to that higher standard, or I could lose everything I have. You got to understand, I'm giving you one scenario, but you have to understand the overall big picture. For those of us that have been here from the start of this development, like me and a few others on this call today, these walks have been a source of angst from day one. And no one's fixing the problem. We either are kicking the can, or pushing it aside, or moving it along. But we will never be at rest at this. And I'm just giving you where I feel today, because this is always going to be the situation. We're moving to a higher standard. We don't have the capital for it.
Okay, we have your point, Tony. I see Bob Connor's hand up. I think that's Bob, right?
It is Bob. It is not Barbara Connor. Yes. I just listening to your meeting, I had a couple of environmental concerns about whether the town is facilitating overdevelopment near Saratoga Lake. I understand there are legal issues in Hearn Row, but I'm also referring to the development around the Nostalgia property. But the real reason I'm commenting is in a different area, is on the Ruley Road proposal, which appears to be similar to a proposal that was made a few years ago under a previous supervisor for a development in that area. And it was brought up before the town board, it was waved through, and then there was some public opposition at the planning board level and it was dropped. But that area, as far as I know, is zoned land conservation. And one lesson is that it's better to get state money to purchase development rights to protect farms and open space, because zoning can always be changed. But I don't see why the town board would consider a zoning change or a PDD that has the same effect when that property is between the Zim-Smith Trail and the Boston Creek. There are potential environmental damage to the creek. Could also certain aesthetic damage to anybody walking or biking along the Zim Smith Trail, which has a beautiful view now down to the Boston Creek, and which will be much undermined by a bunch of houses being there. So that is my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. And yeah, I think it's a point well taken. And we were talking about this today. My understanding is that the current owner purchased the property while it was zoned LC, so that distinguishes it from, you know, other situations that the town board has faced. So, yep, I mean, I hear you, and these are valid points. Anyone else? Give it one moment. Helen, did you want to talk? Okay, I guess not. Oh, I think she's just, Helen, do you want to talk? You're muted, Helen, so I can't hear you.
And Jamie, unmute her.
I've got it now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. My question was concerning the creation of the ambulance district. First, I fully support the support of the need for help for our ambulances. And but at this point in time, I understand that they are now being fully funded by the town. And if an ambulance district is created, this will begin a tax for all of the town residents and businesses who own property. They're going to have to pay a tax. And I just question the timing of this. I mean, we're right in the middle of a pandemic. You've got seniors who are trying to move forward. They've got to pay their taxes. You've got businesses that are hurting. And now we want to add a new tax to the town residents. And also, I understand that the county is receiving a substantial amount of money from the federal government. And we are somewhere in the range of $800,000 that's coming to our town. So I just question the timing of this and adding more burden to our residents, especially our seniors. I come from a history of worrying about seniors and the poor. And I see what you're trying to, well, I don't actually see what you're trying to do, but I just wonder, is this the time to move forward on something like this when already people are hurting due to all of the issues that are before us? So that's my comment for tonight.
Okay, thanks very much, Helen. And just a couple of quick points. Yes, the district, if it's enacted, would be effective next year, not this year. That's 2022. And second of all, I think there is some kind of consensus, or at least feeling on some of the board members, me at least, that, you know, it should be put to the voters as a referendum. So, you know, the voters will have a chance to decide, you know, whether or not to do this if the board agrees that it should go to a public referendum.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Jamie?
Can I just make another comment? I've said this before. Running this meeting via Zoom is not in the job description of the building and planning coordinator. But man, you have stepped up. I think it worked well tonight. We managed to make the hybrid method, I think, work. Hopefully everybody on Zoom could hear us, and we certainly could hear them. So thank you, Jamie, for keeping with it and making it happen.
Yeah, good work,
I second
Jamie.
that. Nice work. It was certainly good from our point of view. We heard everybody. So, you know, maybe if you hear any comments from people on Zoom as to, you know, ability to hear us and everything, that'd be great. But yeah, I was worried about the hybrid method, but this seemed to work really good. So thank you.
We even heard John better tonight.
That's right. Yeah.
We'll know you've made.
Would you like
the
me
full
to repeat
transition to
everything
a
I said
CIO,
earlier?
You start telling us to turn it off and turn it back on.
I revise and extend my remarks.
And John can appear without a mask on if he's by Zoom, right? Yeah.
On this end, it was also very clear and, you know, very effective.
Oh, good.
So,
Good.
thank
That's
you
good to
for
hear.
the extra effort to make it work.
All righty. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thanks very much. Good night, everybody. Thanks.